WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. I want to thank you for being with us today. Each and every week at 2:30, we come to you with a show that is information and education based. This week, as we approach the holiday season, we're talking about children, child care. We're talking with folks that know a lot about that. We're talking with Jane Dudley. Jane is a Adult and Family Services Program Manager with the Department of Social Services. We're talking with Carlina, Simmons. And Carlina, you deal with particularly with foster care and adoption programs and work as a program manager with DSS as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I want to thank both of y'all for being with us today. I thought about how to open this conversation, and I think it's important that we make it as broad as possible, but yet focus a lot on children and what's happening with children in the communities of Sampson County and maybe even larger. But particularly, I want to hear from you guys, and I noticed in both of your comments, am I correct in assuming that this job that you do is a calling more than it is a job?
I would agree with that.
Yes, it is.
Definitely. I think that it's not a job that you can go to from 8 to 5, 9 to 5, and just leave right on the dot and go home and move on to the next part of your day, cooking dinner or picking kids up, because you leave sometimes not at 5, but maybe 6, maybe 10 p.m. that night. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're working a Saturday, but it's not the kind of job that you just leave at the desk and then pick it back up when you come in the morning. I often have to, I have a commute to work. I have a 30-minute commute, and I use that time to try to process the things that have happened to me that day. And so because of the families that we deal with, the children, the neglectful situations that we encounter, the crisis that we encounter every day that families are in.
You have a unique perspective, and I want to refer back a little bit to a brief that I received from you, and I'm going to just kind of read this and ask you to kind of explain, but you say, how I saw my community growing up here as a child, teenager, and young adult is much different than how I see things now as a social worker who has gone into the areas of the community and faced head on the problems that exist there. I think you nailed the core of it. Carlina, I think she's kind of zeroed in on something that is very important. I want you to try to help us see through your eyes what you've seen. And I'll let you address that and then maybe get Carlina to address it.
I grew up here. I've always lived in Sampson County. I graduated from Clinton High School. My mother worked at Sampson Regional Medical Center. She was a nurse there for 30 years. My dad worked at a manufacturing plant in Fayetteville, but this was my home. My family lived here. We did church here. It's just a very different perspective. I lived in a middle-class family. I had a brother and sister growing up, and I didn't really know what social services did. I went to school to become a social worker, but I didn't really understand what that meant. And I think that when you go to school for anything, you really don't maybe not know what you're getting into until you start having to apply what you've learned. And so in 2005, when I started working at the Department of Social Services as a Child Protective Services investigator, my naivety went away quickly. Mm-hmm. I soon learned what real crisis is. You hear about those things on the TV. You maybe hear people even describing what they go through. Mm-hmm. But when you meet families that are in crisis, when you meet and have to do a body inventory on a child that's been abused and take that child to the emergency room and photograph them and ask a judge to, help me protect this child, we need custody, or any array of situations that we deal with, your perspective changes.
Carlina, you mentioned that you've been doing this for 10 years now.
Yes.
And you also mentioned that you couldn't see yourself doing anything else.
That's right. It's interesting because I had no intentions of becoming a social worker. That was never even a thought in my mind as I was going through school. And I do find it interesting and agree that about what you said being a calling, because it truly is. Because I always say social work chose me.
Yeah.
It did. It chose me. I tried different things at first. I kind of meandered around after college, and it definitely chose me. And what I've seen over the years is that cases are just more complex now. You have issues that you see now that you didn't see years ago. Very small children with significant mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And we've seen an uptick since the pandemic in just the drug abuse and the domestic violence and those particular issues that we're seeing more of since 2020. And I would personally love to see a study just on the effect that COVID has had mm-hmm. on children and families, because I think we're both seeing it mm-hmm. in the units that we work in, and
that's children and adult
mm-hmm.
Protective services that I've always believed that stress is one of the number one factors in what drives a parent to neglect, abuse their child, what drives a family member to maybe neglect their elder parent or disabled child. Stress has a lot to do with things. I don't think that people mean to mistreat their family members, their children. I mean, they're children. Mm-hmm. It's not normal to do those types of things. But I think that the circumstances and the stress that people are under, and just to echo what you just said, mm-hmm. it makes it a bigger problem. It just makes everything worse when stress is involved. And I wanted to mention to you, Carlina, when you said earlier that social work picked you, mm-hmm. and even when you try to walk away from it or go a different path, it's like it sucks you back. It really does pick you. I feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, definitely we appreciate what you guys do and your colleagues as well. But I think you mentioned something that strikes a point with me. Do you feel like, and I want to get both of your comments on this, do you feel like that folks have an understanding of what parenting is and should be, or have we transitioned in this upside down world, not only with COVID, but even before COVID, that there's a lack of boundaries? There just seems to be this whatever goes. That parenting is not only important in understanding that there are prescribed things, but a long time ago there was a book Dr. Spock put out, how you look after your baby and all this kind of thing. Have we missed something in transitioning what parents should do from their previous generation? Help us understand what you're seeing that maybe we're not. I think we're seeing the results of what you see is actually happening.
I think that we've gotten to a place where there's a lot of focus on provision, and that's being confused for parenting. So you have parents who they have the house, they have the cars, and the good job, but while they're pursuing the stuff, the children are left behind. Mm-hmm. They're at home, they're by themselves. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of homes where it's a two income household, so both of the parents are out of the home, mm-hmm. and the children are just kind of doing their own thing and left to their own devices. And so, in my opinion, I think that in some ways provision has taken the place of parenting. And you don't need money for that.
Yeah.
Jane,
we used to refer to that as latchkey kids.
Mm-hmm.
That was years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that still exist?
Well, we have to look at the supervision that child needs. In fact, we get involved with cases mm-hmm. because of, speaking of latchkey, depending on how long that child may be unsupervised or left alone, or maybe that child has some mental health issues. Maybe they're not 5, and don't need to be left. Maybe they're 16, but they have a tendency to start fires. That child does not need to be left unsupervised. So it's to echo again what you said about mental health issues, society's changing. I mean, we have a thing now that I didn't have when I was growing up, and you didn't either. Cell phones. Everybody has their face in a tablet, a device of some kind. And I think that it's easy for families, parents to use those things to occupy their child, to babysit the child. Not as much family time is spent. In my home, this is difficult. I try, though, and don't succeed fully, but I try to still make sure that we're having dinner together when we can. But when I was growing up, we had dinner every night at my home. My mother worked, as I said, she worked at some points in my childhood, she had 3 jobs. And my dad he commuted back and forth to Fayetteville, but we had dinner every night. I don't know how she did it. I think back and think, how did she have stew beef and rice or lasagna? How did she make this happen? And because
I hear a lot of people out there saying amen right now.
Yeah, I don't know how she did it, but she did. And that was a time where we came together, and I don't know that is, well, I do know it's not happening like it should anymore. And that's when families connect. That's when you share about your day. That's when you share about your dreams, whatever. You just talk. And I think that, that has been sucked out of our society in large part. But I think there's a lot of different things that we can, what you said, I definitely think. I also believe that families struggle with resources.
Carlina, I think Jane just referred to something. It's interesting. We've got about 30 seconds before we're going to go to the break. So just toss this on the table right quick. She mentioned this idea of communication, of personal interactive communication. That's a big part we're missing as well. When we come back, I want you to kind of speak to it from what you've seen, because I think the whole world of social media has changed that. So just kind of as a teaser coming back in, let's touch on social media, what impact it has, and how important those personal interactions with family are. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. Call a friend, stay tuned. We're talking about families. We're talking about children. We're talking about everything from foster care to adoption. And we'll be back in one moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on the air. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. Our guests today are Carlina Simmons, and she is with DSS, a program manager, foster care, adoption. Also, Jane Dudley, been there for a few years, Jane, and you are a program manager at Sampson DSS, Adult and Family Services. And I throw the adult in so we can maybe talk about adults today as well. But for the most part, we're kind of dealing with children. As we went to break, we were talking about how do you kind of maintain that attention? How do you communicate in a world that adolescents have now, when it seems that the social media platforms, Carlina, are predominantly their world? Maybe we could text them and get their attention, or maybe we need to do a Snapchat. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing that social media can be positive and negative. I think that there's a disconnect somewhere that's taking place, and I think about my own family sometimes when we're all home watching a movie. You look around the room and pretty soon everybody's on their phone. Everybody's looking at something on their
while
phone
you're watching a movie.
While we're watching the movie, right? And so it sounds strange when I talk about it, but in the moment, it just feels so natural because those electronics are right there at your fingertips. And I think that in situations where maybe a child is neglected, that social media can be a part of that. You have that cell phone, Facebook, Instagram, that's now the influence. That's the parent, that's the best friend. While the parents are, maybe they're not fully equipped to parent the way that, we would say would be healthy. And so the phone and the social media becomes the entertainment. It helps the parents because they don't have to deal with whatever behavior is going on, keeps the child quiet. Mm-hmm. And you just see the family fabric start to break down. Nobody's talking to each other. Mm-hmm. Everybody's on that phone. So,
Jane, I think one of the things that when I look at this discussion we're having, it's right on point in the sense that seems to be a boundary issue. There seems to be an understanding issue structurally. Mm-hmm. Adolescent behavior has been a topic for decades, if not generations. But during that period of time in the mental development of a child, the exposure of all these things that we look at from Facebook to TikTok to Instagram, call it out, whatever, they're being exposed to that. If that becomes the driving force, then where do you as a parent step in, and what should be the role of a parent? I mean, mm-hmm. who's driving the car, I guess? Mm-hmm. Are you driving it, or is the 13-year-old kid driving? How does that work? I think
it's hard for, I told my parents the other day, I said, you guys have no idea what, how it is to parent these days. And we were just talking about how they parented and how it is now. Mm-hmm. And they agreed. My mom said, I don't know how, parents do it these days. It's an extra challenge on top of all the other challenges you face at any age, mm-hmm. from birth to adulthood. It's a challenge, but I think that parents have to be, the key word is intentional. You have to be intentional about those boundaries, and you have to be consistent. So, my children are not allowed to be on their tablets or even watching TV, but a certain amount of time a day. I read an article the other day that said if you want to get your child's attention, you have to actually touch them. You have to make contact with them. If you want them to hear what you're saying, you have to reach out and make a physical contact. And so I tried that, and I have found that it works. If I'm, speaking to my child that's across the room and he's got that thing that's taking his attention away from me, then I need to actually be intentional, go over, touch him, make sure that we're making eye contact and we're connecting, where the communication is, not just you're hearing me, but we're looking at each other and we're seeing each other and experiencing each other. Mm-hmm. But technology definitely has thrown a wrench in there with parenting. But it doesn't mean that we don't have, we are tasked with trying to overcome that, or work around that. And I believe the key word there is just be intentional, but you also have to be consistent and put boundaries there.
Carlina, I want to switch to you with this observation and see if I can get both of you to pick up on this. For parents that may be listening today, how important is this role modeling thing that parents need to understand that children learn, but not just listening, but watching what parents do? And I bring that up because I have to be forced to look at social media myself simply because what I do. But sometimes I look at it and I'm thinking, I just saw a parent do something that if that were me, and again, I don't want to get into my, when I was brought up, they did so and so. But if that were during my time, I don't know what I have. I might not have been here. But gestures and things that parents are doing, and then children look at it, how important is that role model part?
It's so important. It is very important, that role modeling. It's not just, do as I say and not as I do. You have to be the person that you expect your child to be. You have to model that behavior, or else social media is going to model the behavior that they want to see out of your children. This is by no coincidence that you see the things online that you see. It's curated in a way to attract young people and to have them drawn in, because that's how they make their money. Yeah. And so if you don't teach them, somebody will. And it's not going to be what you want it to be. It's going to be what they want. It's going to be whatever draws your child in to continue to have them on that phone, glued to it, so that the corporations can make money.
I recall reading the topical phrase called family planning. does anybody ever really plan and have a family? Or did they just go through spontaneity and all of a sudden, as a kid, what are we going to do?
Well, I think regardless of if you plan it or not, you're not, there's no manual for, explaining how to be a parent. You just, whether you've planned or not, you're all in the same boat. When that child comes, you're learning as you go.
Do we parent as we were parented?
I think I do.
I got some pause there, so I know you had to think about that one. Yeah, I think our exposure kind of templates our forethought.
It does. I have a whole lot of my mother and father inside of me.
That's probably a good thing.
Oh, I think that's a great thing. My parents are wonderful. But, no parent is perfect. So there's certain things where I might catch myself and I'm like, gosh, I just sound like my mom when I said that. But I think that is the importance of role modeling, because the things that I've learned from my parents, I'm able to instill, and I feel like I come from some really good stock, and I'm proud to be able to pass that on. But, what if I didn't? Yeah. So now I'm passing on to another generation probably some not so good things. And I just think that I think we do the best that we can.
Clearly your parents had great expectations for you.
Yes, sir. They still do.
Absolutely. And still do. And still growing. So, Jane, when we think about that, when we think about parenting, you guys see children that do not have what Carlina was just talking about. They almost have the opposite of that. Is that a critical part of why they are where they are?
I think so. I mean, I've worked with families over the years that like I said, I grew up in this community. I experienced a wonderful childhood. It wasn't perfect. My parents weren't perfect, just like you just said, Carlina. But I had
human beings.
I had stability, and I knew that I was safe at night, and I knew that I had my family, and that I was going to be taken care of and protected. And that's very different from the children and often the adults that we encounter. They don't have that, and it's hard. It's been hard for me to kind of try to understand that, but it's real. It's very real, and so that's a challenge for us. But we have to look back and kind of dig down. What we see on that day one when we're going into a home to initiate a case is not the beginning. We have to dig back and see, how did we get here, and try to kind of filter through that and talk to people. That's how we learn. I think I said that last year about this time when we did a segment that the family is the expert. No matter the shape that they're in the moment that we intervene, they're still the expert, because they know the history that they've had. They know what's worked and what hasn't worked. And it feels bad when social services comes in. I know it feels bad to families when social services comes in and uninvited, and feels like forcing change. You're not willing to change, and now we have to move forward to do things differently. Is what words matter. We try to say things in that way, but ultimately things do have to change, or this next step could happen. But it definitely does have an effect. And some children and families that I've dealt with, they don't realize this is normal. What I'm experiencing is normal to them. Is normal. And that has baffled me. Even now, after being at social services for 16 years, sometimes cases that we deal with, I hear that this is just normal for them. But that's the reality. And our job is to try to help them have a different, better quality of life, do things differently.
We're going to take a break, Carlina. When we come back, Jane, I want you guys to bring us up to speed on what is the precursor for you to intervene. What are some of those things that will likely cause you to show up at somebody's door? And we'll take that up when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment talking about serious and critical issues as it relates to child care and, for that matter, adult care. We'll be back in a moment.
Every year, 7 million 911 calls are made in North Carolina.
911, what's your emergency?
Will you answer the call? Every second counts. You can be that lifeline. People in crisis look to us for assistance. We provide guidance and support until physical help can arrive at the scene. Join us and make a difference in our community. Be the calm in the chaos. Be the voice in the dark. It's the hardest career you'll ever love. Will you answer the call? Discover more at it.nc.gov/911careers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. We come to you Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Channel 16, Star Communication. The show airs on Tuesdays at 2:30. We welcome you each week. This week, we're talking with two folks that know a lot about behavior, particularly in the world we're talking about right now is adolescent behavior. I know, Jane, you deal with adult care with Department of Social Services, but Jane Dudley and Carlina Simmons, both with DSS, both people that often show up at the door sometimes when things go completely awry. As we come back and as we talked about at the last segment, I want to kind of get into that area a little bit so folks will know why and how you end up at a particular location, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a house, and I suspect it spans all socioeconomic levels.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start with you, Carlina. You show up at a door. How did you get there? And I'm not talking about whether you drove a Lexus or a Mercedes there. I'm just wondering, what caused you to show up at that door?
Well, before we go out to a home, there has to be a report. And that report has to meet the legal definition of abuse, neglect, or dependency. So there are laws and policies that govern what we do, even in the very beginning, whether or not a situation is serious enough by legal standards to go out and visit a home. Mm-hmm. So when we show up to the home, it's for a reason. Now, we may find that the report was, maybe somebody was just mad. Maybe somebody was just disgruntled and they made up something. But when we get something that rises to the level of a high enough concern that we have to go out and assess the situation.
So, Jane, you're charged by law to do that.
Yes.
So when you go out, as Carlina was pointing out, there's a reason. Does those reasons come to you by telephone? Is it something that somebody observed and maybe saw you at the grocery store and said, hey, you need to check so-and-so and so? Or did they have to make a formal, I won't call it a complaint, or a formal announcement of some kind?
All of the above. We receive reports by phone. Sometimes people walk into our agency, they drive there to give us a report. We have intake workers at our office that their job is to sit by the phone, and they're often on the phone taking reports. Our intake workers take Child Protective Services reports and Adult Protective Services reports. And like Carlina said, those are reports that are typed up, they're captured on an intake tool, and then the social worker that intake worker will take that report to the supervisor, discuss the allegations that were made by that reporter. Sometimes we get email. Sometimes my director, Sarah Bradshaw, will receive an email where someone has reached out via email. Sometimes I have received an email. They'll go on the directory you can Google it. They'll figure out our email. They'll email whatever their concern is. And that's a legitimate report. I mean, if we have some concerns there, a child or an adult's name, enough information, they may not have answered every question that we would have asked them if we had a phone call or a visit off the street. But if it's enough information that causes concern and meets those statutory regulations that she mentioned, we must go out. And it's not voluntary. And I know that, as I said earlier, that feels uncomfortable sometimes, but it feels intrusive. And it just doesn't feel good to the public for us to show up. But we we honestly try to do that in the most gentle, compassionate way that we can, because we're social workers. We didn't go into this field to harm people, to upset people. We actually went into this field because we want to help people. But our job is just, it's misunderstood a lot of times. The public doesn't really understand sometimes what we do, why we do it, how we have to do it. For example, when we receive those reports, if say it's a child, one child is the victim child that gets reported to us because maybe that child has marks and bruises around their neck, okay, and showed up to school with marks around their neck, disclosed to the teacher that they were choked by a parent, and that teacher would make a report, or that some school official would make a report to us. But that child has 4 other siblings that live in that home. All 5 of those children in that home are considered victim children per the law. So not only are we dealing with that one child who had those marks around the neck, but we're also dealing with those other 4 children that are in that home, because they're all considered what the law considers victim children.
How important is it for the general public, the people that we're talking to today, to understand that this structure is in place and the purpose is that ultimately it's there to save a child's life or to save what future they may have left? Is it paramount to understanding that when a police officer shows up at your door, that there's a reason when you show up at their door, it's just as critical? Yes.
Absolutely. And I think that it would help if people had an understanding, like Jane said, that, we're going out because we were called about a situation. And believe it or not, we still get nervous as long as we've done this. We still get nervous because we care. And you don't want to hurt people. You don't want them to think that you're telling them that you're doing something wrong. You really want to come in and assess the situation and see where you can help. And so I think that if people understood that we're doing our job first and foremost, but also we really want to help. If there's something going on, we want to be that conduit of change. And just understand that we're here to partner with you. We're not here to work against you. Now, we might have to make some tough decisions. If the safety of the child or children is imminent, we may have to make that decision to remove them from the home. But we're going into it with open eyes, open hearts, trying to assess what's going on, trying to see where we can put services in place to help mitigate the situation. And I think it's the same for a police officer. I don't think they show up wanting to arrest anyone.
Exactly.
But we are tasked with having to do things that are difficult sometimes.
We are reactive. We're not proactive. So we're not protective services, that child protective services and adult protective services. When we get that call of this is the condition the child was found in, this is the situation that's going on, we weren't involved to try to stop that situation. We have to react to in that moment, and so that's very much like what law enforcement does. And we do, like she said, we do have anxiety when we go out, even now after doing it for so many years, because you don't know what you're going to meet on the other side of that door. Absolutely. And we don't go out equipped with guns and tasers and things. No, we're not armed. No. And most of the time, JW, we don't take law enforcement with us, because when we take law enforcement with us, that sets a bad tone. You've got a person looking out the window and see, knock on the door, and oh my gosh, there's blue lights out, or there's a sheriff's deputy out there, and oh my God, and it's fear. And we often, it's not just when we go in. There's a transparent conversation that happens. Social services, knocks on the door, and we're asking to come in and see your living quarters. In fact, we must come in and see the condition of the home. If it's a report of a deplorable condition, maybe there are rodents in the home, or maybe there's a bug problem, or maybe there's holes in the floor, or maybe there's a back end of the house that's getting ready to fall in. It's not a safe environment for those children. And we have to see that. So that's part of our assessment. And that creates a lot of anxiety in the people. So we have anxiety, and the family has anxiety, and it
can be embarrassing for the family.
Yes.
Because if you're living like that and you're just trying to make it, you don't want the outside coming in and seeing what's really going on. So
and we have to assure people we are not here. Look, I told a lady yesterday, I'm not looking for perfection. I have a home, and my home is not perfect. In fact, if you went to my house today, you'd see, dirty dishes in the sink and a pile of clothes on the couch. We're not looking for that. We're looking for safety. We're looking for children and adults to be in an environment where their basic needs are met, and they're in a safe, home with folks that have their best interests at heart.
And that's an interesting observation Jane just made. The basic needs. Carlina, when we're talking about basic needs, we're talking more than just a structural comfort.
Yes.
Basic needs may be somebody present in the home that's an adult.
Right.
Explain to us a little bit about that basic need thing.
So, of course, supervision, like you stated, adequate food in the home, enough food for everybody. With this time of year, proper heating.
Yeah, heat.
You see families nowadays heating the home with the stove, which is very dangerous.
Making sure
bedding, sleeping arrangements,
and making sure that home is not. I've walked into a home and there's drugs out on the coffee table.
Yes.
And you've got small children walking around. Small kids pick things up, put it in their mouths. We're going into an environment, and we're quickly observing, what do we see? What's the safety hazard here? What can we do right now? What are the strengths? And we're looking for strengths as well. We're not just looking for the issues or the problems. We're also looking for, what has this family done right? What did they have already in place that they who do they call when they have an emergency? What kind of safety features have they put in? We're looking for those things as well.
We're gonna have to take a break, but when we come back, I want to finish that piece of the conversation. Then I want to kind of get into some things that folks out there listening and watching this show can actually help you guys with, that maybe will ultimately help those families that you're called to be witness of. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. Call a friend. We're talking about some of those things that's most important to us, our children.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. I want to thank you again for being with us each and every week over the past, now going on 11 years, a little over 11 years. We've been on this show, and we've talked to you about continuing your messaging to us. That email address is weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. You can also continue to drop us a card or a note about a show, or even a suggestion. We enjoy getting those suggestions, and we research that and look into it. Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. That's zip codes 28328. Continue that communication. We also want to thank all those folks at the radio station that mentioned this show. We're aired on TV and radio station. Wayne Weeks with the Gospel Hour is always a person that connects with us, and I appreciate Wayne's commentary. Robert Stroud, Tommy Elliott, and others at the station that kind of keeps you cued in on what's going on each and every week. We thank you for being there. And today we're kind of coming to the close of a show that, ladies, I've said off air that we could do a semester here. Jane Dudley with Department of Social Services, and Carlina Simmons, also program managers, both program managers of Department of Social Services. We've had a great conversation, I think. A lot of information being put out. I want to kind of cover, if we can in this last segment, some of the things that could help you guys in what you do. And at Christmas time, you have some programs. One of them is called Christmas Cheer. Tell us about that and how that helps you with the foster care programs and those kind of things.
I'll talk a little bit about Christmas Cheer, and you talking about adoptions, if that's okay. So Christmas Cheer, our program that we have, it kind of starts gearing up around October. However, we will receive monies from families or businesses, churches, all through the year, and those monies are designated to go into our Christmas Cheer Fund. And around this time, we start collecting lists from our foster children and our adult wards that are in our custody of things that they need and some things that they want, because everybody should get something that they want at Christmas time. And it should be new. It shouldn't be used. And so we take those monies and we are able to purchase items that they may particularly, want. It's not a new car. It's not even most of the time a phone or a tablet or anything, but a lot of times it's basic needs. It's clothes. It might be a pair of tennis shoes. It might be a bicycle. For our adult wards, they might want a jacket or some new Sunday pants. Basic things that we take for granted, and we can use those monies out of that Christmas Cheer Fund and provide for that. We have some of our regular donors. It's a little early, so I won't mention who we've received monies from, because this money is still flowing in. But like I said, we have some faithful people in our community who donate every year. I will mention Olive Grove Church. They, for Thanksgiving, which is kind of part of our Christmas Cheer program, they donated to us 40 cards. They have a program called Serve Our City. And they donated 40 cards, and we were able to identify families in our community who need a Thanksgiving meal and connect them to Olive Grove, and so they are helping with that. So we just encourage, if you are wanting to bless a family, a child, an adult this season, reach out to us. We will get those funds where they need to go.
It sounds like that makes it simple too. It's particularly for churches. They don't have to worry about buying anything or putting anything together or checking a size. They can just give that to you. You already know where that need is in the community, and you just take it and move it forward.
That's right.
Right. Now, how do they contact you?
They can contact both Carlina and I at 910-592-4200. And my direct extension is 3354.
And mine is 3315.
We'll try to get that on the TV side, on the script, so folks can see that. So what other programs, Carlina, are you offering there?
Well, November is National Adoption Awareness Month. And so as program manager over foster care adoption and licensing, we really like to take this time to, first of all, honor and thank our families who have adopted children out of our custody or not even out of our custody, maybe privately, and also to just make the community aware that we have several children in need of homes. Some of them may not be up yet for adoption, but definitely need a loving home. So we're always recruiting foster parents. Yes. We're always recruiting individuals who are willing to open up their homes to children. We have roughly 140 children in care right now, give or take. And unfortunately, we don't have enough homes in Clinton to house all of them. So a lot of children end up getting placed out of county. On the good side of that, a lot of children get placed with relatives. Yeah. But for children who cannot be placed with relatives, a lot of times they have to go out of county, or they have to go to group homes. And we really want to expand the number of foster homes that we have in Clinton. We think that, when a child goes through the trauma of being removed from their family, they need to stay connected to their community. They need to be able to still go to their home school and see their friends. So we are really looking to expand the number of foster homes that we have licensed by Sampson County DSS.
There's on the website, the Department of Health and Human Services, there's a thing you can go on that website and actually click on that, and the children's pictures are there, and it does a little profile sheet. It's really somewhat shocking, definitely a feeling of sadness to know we have, I think the last time I looked, it was like 15,000 maybe in the state. It was a huge number. But just in this county, people that need a home. And we're talking children, young children. We're talking folks up to 15, 16 years of age.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to. If you've ever seen the commercial on TV, foster parents, we don't expect them to be perfect. We just, these kids need love.
Yeah.
They need structure and consistency.
Do we give enough attention to that kind of thing as a society? And I'm just reflecting here now, so I'm not making an opinion about anything. I'm just saying, do we give enough attention? I know we get, and listen, I'm definitely not putting dogs or cats down or anything, but we give a lot of attention to adopting pets. Mm-hmm. Even a commercial the other day, buy turkey to give pets and all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, but what about our children?
Yeah. Do
we do enough?
Well, I think that there are a lot of people out there who want to do it, but maybe it's just not the right time. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're just not at a place yet where they feel like they can bring a child into the home. Maybe they have their own children they're still raising and they don't have room. So I think that a lot of people have it in their heart to do it. And whenever we have our training classes for our new foster parents, a lot of people will come up and say, I've been thinking about this for years. I've been praying about this for so long. And, now I feel like it's the right time. And I just think that we have so many people out there who just waiting for the right time. And I would say that now is the right time to reach out and inquire. And at least find out what it would entail to become a licensed foster parent. So if you feel it in your heart, just act upon it. I think you'll find out that it's not as difficult as you think it is. And
that licensed foster parent, that is something you guys scrutinize very closely because anybody just can't say, well, hey, I'll open the door and get about 6 or 8 children and
I would say yes and no because so obviously we have guidelines that we have to
do a background.
We do background. They have to go through what we call MAP classes, and they have to have they might be approved to have so many children in their home. But then again, I just want to echo what I said a minute ago. They don't have to be perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for them to bring these children into their home and provide them with love and care and treat these children just like they would their own children that are in the home. Because that can be also traumatizing to bring a child into your home, but they have other children that are maybe their biological children and they're treated differently. Yeah. That can be hurtful. I do want to say that I agree with Carlina, and I think that on the flip side of that, sometimes people push problems to the side and they say, that's not my problem. I have my own set of problems. But I've always been the kind of person living this social work life for all these years, I'm realizing that the community, it is our responsibility. This is our job that we chose, but the community has a responsibility to look around and care about the world around them, the children that are growing up around their children, and what can you do to enhance your community? I mean, we really need to stop and think. We live in I would say, predominantly Christian community, and I think that that those are the things we're supposed to be giving of ourselves and looking for ways that we can serve each other, serve our community.
Carlina, when I'm listening to Jane, I'm thinking at some point in time, Jane and you as well are going to reach that point of retirement. I'm afraid to say, I don't think you can ever retire from this job. What do you think?
No.
It'll be with you.
It's in me. It's in me. And I would love to foster at some point, not right now, but down the line. I'm always thinking of ways that I could give back to the community, even after retirement. Gaps in services that I see that I say, maybe I could start a business and take care of this need in the community. So it's definitely something that is just a part of me.
What do you think, Jane? Do you think you'll be able to walk away from it?
Well, I do agree with Carlina. I think it would be nice to have a time of refreshment. But I do think that, like I said earlier in the segment, it's something that just draws you back in. And I think that I'll always have that desire to always be on the lookout for things that I can do to be involved or to to educate, those around me. Sometimes I talk about things like, that we've talked about here in this hour with my family. And even now it's like, what are you talking about? And I have a desire to help people understand this is real. This is what is really happening around you. This is what happens, 2 doors down from you. This is what happens across town from you. And you need to be involved. And I want to be involved. I think that our lives need to matter for something.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being with us. We're going to have to go for today. Welcome you back anytime. It's a subject we could continue on for several shows. Thanks again for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week right here on We Should Know. May God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.